All right. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second Equity Advisory Committee on Aging and Disability of 2023. I'm Amanda Lawrence, Project Director for California's Master Plan for Aging. We continue to meet virtually in this space, and I have a couple logistics to go over for this morning's meeting. We do have live captioning, and we also have ASL interpretation live streaming on today's webinar. As always, the slides, the recording, our transcript, and the agenda will be posted to Cal HHS's Master Plan for Aging webpage, and we can post a link in that into the chat. And I'd also love for the committee members, if you haven't already, please rename yourselves. You can do that by hovering over your personal video stream and then left clicking on those three dots that appear in the upper right corner of your video, and just go ahead and enter your own name in there. Okay, I see people are logging in. We seem to have a full house of members. I'm so happy to see everyone here today. We are going to have public comment 2 times on the agenda today, and we'll provide these instructions again once that public comment period arrives. But basically, if you are on the phone, you can press *9 if you'd like to make a comment, or if you're attending by the webinar, you can raise your hand and then it'll be added to the queue. We'll call on you when it's your time to make your public comment. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Marina Castillo-Agosto, our Equity Officer at the California Department of Aging.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you today on this Thursday morning. I hope you all are doing well. This is my second meeting, and I'm thrilled because we just have some exciting topics. I want to take this opportunity to just acknowledge all our committee members. So if we want to go to them, I think there's 2 slides that list all our committee member names. And I just want to express on behalf of our department, our deep appreciation for your ongoing commitment to our equity vision and work. And I look forward to what's to come in partnership with you. Before I get into the meeting agenda, I'm really excited. My first hire, and that's our Tribal Affairs Manager. And I asked Consuelo to join us here today. And I'm not sure if she is in the queue or not. Let me double check.
I do see her. She has her hands up under attendee.
Okay, great. So, so to set the tone and acknowledge the sacred lands in which we all reside, I have invited Consuelo, even though she doesn't join us until June 1st, to lead us in a land acknowledgement. And this is very important to me as we begin what I think is one of our biggest initiatives is tribal engagement. And so I want to turn it over to Consuelo to just say a few words about where she comes from and her aspirations. You'll hear more from her at our upcoming meeting. And then she'll lead us through our land acknowledgement. And then after that, I'll walk through our agenda today. Thank you.
My name is Consuelo Gambino. I am from the Yuki tribe and an enrolled member of the Round Valley Indian tribes. I've been working with the California tribes and tribal health programs for the past 10 years. So I'm very excited to join as the new Tribal Affairs Manager with the California Department of Aging. And I'm very honored to go ahead and lead the Tribal Land Acknowledgement. Today, as we attend the Equity Advisory Committee on Aging and Disability meeting, we take a moment to acknowledge the tribal lands in California in which we are gathered on. For many centuries, the lands in California have been home to numerous tribes who have protected and respected the sacred lands in which we all reside. The tribes in California are sovereign nations, rich in culture and traditions passed down from tribal elders. I am attending this meeting from Roseville, California, and acknowledge the indigenous homelands of the Nisenan-Maidu people and honor their resilience and cultural preservation.
Thank you, Consuelo. And as I said, I'm very excited to bring her on board. She comes with a breadth of knowledge and just has deep connections with tribal communities, and so more to come. And with that, I want to just invite you all, as we are in this meeting today, to be present, if possible, to remain on Zoom, to be engaged, and also just to be curious and ask questions. I want to hear from you. This is our time, our opportunity. So without further ado, I'd like to just briefly go over the agenda. In honor of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I have invited two esteemed guests today, and I just want to thank them for their commitment and time to want to present today at this meeting to impart information to you all on the contributions of Asian American and Pacific Islanders. So Derek Lamb, our former president and chief executive officer at EACAD Senior Services, will be providing some historical context and giving us some takeaways. I also have invited Sang Yang, who is the executive director from the Hmong Cultural Center in Butte County, who will be providing an overview of the community-based organization that he leads, specifically engaging and supporting Hmong elders. We will have a little bit of time for committee and public comment after those presentations before we move into more CDA updates. And so we have with us Amanda, who is our project director for the Master Plan on Aging, who will be talking about the local aging and disability action planning grant program, and really wanting to hear recommendations from you all how to spread the word on the request for application efforts and ideas for technical assistance related to equity and local planning. We will also hear from our Chief of Research, Ross Lellian, who will give us a brief update on the LGBTQ research project, which we are very excited about as well. We have also invited Mark Beckley, our Chief Deputy Director, and Dr. Nakia Tiri to talk about the Community Assessment Survey for older adults. And again, another opportunity for you all to provide some recommendations and input on outreaching and engaging with underserved communities and diverse populations. After that, we will hear from Sarah, who will be talking to us about some exciting work happening in the older adult and behavioral health space. And, you know, I skipped over our fearless leader, Susan DeMorris, who will be giving us some CDA updates. And so without further ado, I'd like to just move forward to the next slide. And Susan, you're on. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Good morning, everyone. This always feels like a homecoming with this group. These are the most dedicated, most committed stakeholders. I'm just so happy to see all of your names and the faces that I can see. And I just couldn't be prouder to have Marina leading this at her second advisory committee meeting, and it is an honor to meet you, Consuelo. I have not yet had the chance to meet you, so thank you for joining today, and we cannot wait to embrace you when you arrive officially to the Department of Aging in June. In terms of opening remarks, I just wanted to reflect for a minute on the governor's May budget revision. By now, everyone has likely seen that there were not cuts to the key programs that support older adults, people with disabilities, and family caregivers, nor were there cuts to any of the equity initiatives that are underway at the California Health and Human Services Agency and other agencies around the state. We know that a budget is a statement of values, and I am just incredibly grateful to our governor and Secretary Galley that in this budget climate, they worked very, very hard to protect the programs that serve the populations that we'll be talking about today. I'm just incredibly, incredibly grateful. And I also want to acknowledge that, you know, it is a budget decision. It's policy, it's funding, it's program that Marina did not just drop out of the sky and appear like a mirage at the Department of Aging. You know, it was prior work to gain the approval for an equity officer position and other positions, including Consuelo's position, to really build out our equity office. And I am incredibly grateful to everyone who preceded me, Kim McCoy-Wade, and, you know, the secretary's work to approve positions in prior budget years that give us the resources today to do this work as it needs to be done. Marina has been such a fantastic addition to the Department of Aging team, such a fabulous internal and external leader. And we're just, you know, it takes resources to do this work. And I'm just very grateful that we're building out those resources and we're building out those building out this team under Sarah Steenhausen's leadership in the Division of Policy, Research, and Equity. So just an especially warm welcome to Marina today as she leads her first meeting. And it's just fantastic. We feel very grateful to have a leader at CDA working with other departments, other agencies, and most importantly, with all of you as members of this committee and stakeholders. So just that's it. Back to you, Marina.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. And it's true. This work can't be done in a silo. It's a collective. And, you know, so when you have executive leadership who you don't have to convince about equity and disparities and inequities, and embedding that into the way we do business is really refreshing. And so, and I just want to acknowledge all of you committee members. You know, I go back and look at the day of action, and I go back and read some documents that have been developed, and, you know, being here in this position, and then also just, you know, like I mentioned, the tribal manager, and then what's next to come, some exciting things, updates that you'll hear from me at the later during this meeting. You'll see that your recommendations and initiatives are taken seriously, and that we want to partner in you for future initiatives, partner with you to bring them to fruition. So without
And Marina, I'm sorry, there was one more not minor item I wanted to mention and I failed to do because it is on the agenda later and we will be talking about it more in depth. But in the May revision, the governor also proposed $50 million for older adult behavioral health funding. This has never, ever happened in our state before. And it's the direct result of the Day of Action and a series of older adult behavioral health roundtables that we held in Fresno, San Bernardino with Cheryl Brown, EACAD, and in San Francisco with Dr. Marcy Edelman. And this was really the focus in all of the roundtables was absolutely on equity and inclusion. And I just am incredibly grateful to our community partners who turned out for those. And you'll be hearing more about the initiative and what is coming, but it's a key moment in our older adult history of our state to have this proposed in the May revise.
That's awesome. Thank you. Love the whole behavioral health component, I think is awesome. So one thing I also forgot to mention is I just wanted to thank all of you who have made time to do some meet and greets with me. It's been wonderful getting to know you, and you have really just helped me understand pieces of the whole aging and disability world. And so my deepest appreciation, and I haven't completed all of them. So I look forward to the remaining meet and greets. So with that, I want to turn it over to Derek because I'm very excited to hear your presentation, and I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. First and foremost, I want to thank Marina for inviting me to talk about some of the facts that you might find interesting about AAPI. But before that, I want to thank Susan in particular, because it's exciting to hear that CDA has hired Consuelo as your lead person to deal with tribes. In my past career with the U.S. Administration for Community Living, I actually worked with many tribes in the state of California, over 60 of them, and also 2 Native Hawaiian organizations. And I really appreciate the kind of experience I have learned from each and every one of the tribes, and also from a lot of tribal elders. So with that, I want to ask the staff to move to the next slide, please. So as Marina mentioned, this is the month of celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander. But it was not until May 1st, 2009, that President Obama signed a proclamation 8369 that changed the name from Asian Pacific American Heritage Month to AAPI Heritage Month, recognizing many contributions and influence of Asian Americans and Pacific Islander Americans to the history, culture, and achievements of the US. So one may wonder why we use the month of May to celebrate the accomplishments of API. And there are 2 reasons. So if we look back in history about 180 years ago, on May 7th, 1843, a 14-year-old fisherman named Nakahama Majiro became the first official US-Japanese immigrant after being adopted by American Captain William Whitfield, who rescued him and his crew after a shipwreck 300 miles away from the coast of Japan. And then 26 years later, in 1869, specifically May 10th, 1869, commemorated the completion of the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, which was done by a lot of sweat equity and hard work and very little pay Chinese miners who came to the state of California in 1849 and onwards after the gold rush started. So with that, I think I would like to move to the next slide and talk about some of the timelines and milestones basically faced by Asian Americans. And I would like the staff to stay on this slide for the next couple of minutes so that we can walk through some of the important events. So in addition to the 2 landmark events I just described to you, in 1854, the California Supreme Court reinforced the racism against Asian immigrants in People versus Hall ruling that people of Asian descent could not testify against a white person in court. And then 17 years later, in the year 1871, there was a massacre of at least 17 Chinese men and boys in Los Angeles, in our own state. And then 4 years later, the Page Exclusion Act, prohibiting the recruitment of laborers from China, Japan, or any Oriental country, and blocking Chinese women from entering the US. And then in 1882, which was 7 years later, there was the Chinese Exclusion Act banning Chinese immigration. 3 years after, we witnessed the massacre of 28 Chinese miners and burning of 79 homes in the Chinatown area of Rock Springs, Wyoming. And because the white miners were angry that Chinese miners took away their jobs. And then 2 years later, in the year 1887, there was another massacre of 34 Chinese miners along Snake River in Oregon for the same reason. And then 30 years later, 1917, the Immigration Act banning Chinese, Asian Indians, Burmese, Thai, and Malays as part of the Asiatic Bar Zone. Many of us remember December 7th, 1941, the bombing of Pearl Harbor by Japanese. So in 1942, the US adopted the internment of 120,000 Japanese And many of those memories still linger until these days. And then during his bachelor's party on June 23rd, 1982, there was the murder of Vincent Chin. So with that, I would like the staff to move to the next slide so that we can learn more about what's going on with the diversity of Asian American Pacific Islanders. So according to the National Alliance of Mental Illness, API communities consists of approximately 50 ethnic groups speaking over 100 languages. And so just among Chinese, we actually spoke over 300 dialects. So you can imagine how diverse we all are. So, and then Pew Research Center had two researchers, Budiman and Ruiz, and they did a research and showing that 22 million Asian Americans trace their roots to more than 20 countries in East and Southeast Asia and the Indian subcontinent, each with a unique histories, cultures, languages, and other characteristics. So in the next few slides, I'm going to walk you through some of the findings from the Pew Research Center. Next slide, please. So the US Asian population is projected to reach 46 million by the year 2060 in less than 40 years. So during the 1870 census, approximately 63,000 individuals were classified as Asians by the US Census Bureau enumerators. And then fast forward to 1960, which was the first time census respondents could choose their own race. Approximately 1 million individuals self-identified as Asians. And then the nation's Asian populations rose to about 12 million by year 2000, and then nearly doubled to 22.4 million by 2019, which was an 88% increase within 2 decades. Next slide, please. So the single race non-Hispanic segment of the US Asian population makes up about 83%, which was a large majority of all Asians in the country. And this population is also the nation's fastest growing racial or ethnic group. So between 2000 and 2019, the numbers grew by 81%, outpacing a 70% increase among Hispanics. The Black population grew by 20% during the same time span, while there was virtually no change in the white population. And then the multiracial and Hispanic Asians comprise of 14% and 3% respectively in the Asian population. And of the 19 origin groups included in the Pew Research Center study, Japanese Americans are most likely to identify as multiracial non-Hispanic, which was about 32%. And then around 20% Filipinos and 15% of Koreans also identify as multiracial non-Hispanic. Next slide, please. So we talk about the origin groups, and there are 6 which were the largest in this study. Chinese, followed by Indian, by Filipino, by Vietnamese, by Korean, by Japanese. So all the other groups actually totaling 2.7 of the other populations. There's no one group surpassing 600,000 in this study. Next slide, please. So this is a map depicting the distribution of Asian Americans. So you can see about 45% live in the West, with about 1/3 in California alone. So California had an Asian population of approximately 6.7 million in 2019, by far the nation's largest. And it was followed by New York, 1.9 million, Texas, 1.6 million, New Jersey, about 960,000, and Washington, about 850,000. And aside from the state of Hawaii, where US Asians accounted for 57% of the population in 2019, Asians made up the largest share of overall population in California, which was 17%, followed by Washington, 11%, New Jersey, 11%, and Nevada, 11%. Next slide, please. So Asian Americans are projected to be the nation's largest immigrant group by the mid of the century. So single-race non-Hispanic Asians are projected to become the largest immigrant group in the country, surpassing Hispanics in year 2055. By then, Asians are expected to make up 36% of all US immigrants, while Hispanics will make up 34% according to the population projections from the Pew Research Center. Next slide, please. So US-born Asians are substantially younger than the rest of the Asian American population. As of 2019, the Asian population in the US had a median age of 34, slightly lower than the nation's overall median age of 38. But the median age of the US-born Asians actually was much younger. It was 19, compared with 36 among all US-born people. Foreign-born Asians, meanwhile, had the same median age as the nation's overall immigrant population, which was 45. Now, there's some implication about the youthness of this group, is that nearly 60% of US-born Asians were members of the Generation Z in 2019. And then another quarter of the US-born Asian population that year belonged to the millennial, and while less than 10% were Generation X or older. Next slide, please. So many might wonder what's the English proficiency of US Asians. So overall, 72% of all US Asians were proficient in English as of 2019, meaning they either spoke only English or spoke the language very well. Nearly all US-born Asians, 95%, were proficient in English, compared with 57% foreign-born Asians. And then about a third Asians speak only English in their homes, and the remaining, which was 2/3, speak a language other than English. The most common of this is Chinese, including Mandarin and Cantonese, spoken by 34% of Asians at home. Hindi, 13% is the second most commonly spoken non-English language among Asians, followed by Tagalog and other Filipino languages, 9%, and then Vietnamese, 7%. Next slide, please. So one might wonder what's the income variation is among the Asian Americans. So in general, Asian Americans do well on measures of economic well-being compared with the overall US population. But this varies widely among Asian origin groups. So in 2019, the median annual household income of household headed by Asian was about $86,000, compared with $62,000 among all US households. Foreign-born Asians household earn slightly more than those headed by US by about $2,000. And these overall figures, however, hide the differences among Asian origin groups. Say, for example, households headed by Burmese Americans had significantly lower incomes than Asian Americans overall by about 40 some $1,000. So they earned $44,000 versus $86,000. So by contrast, only two Asian origin groups had higher household incomes than among Asian Americans. And those were Indian Americans, who earned about $120,000, and Filipino Americans earning about $90,000. So what's the major takeaways? Next slide, please. So as we are working with some other ethnic groups or races, we do need to respect the unique histories and cultures and languages and other characteristics. And we never use cookie cutter approach or stereotypes. As I mentioned before my presentation, I used to work with many tribes in the state of California, over 60 of them, and also 2 native Hawaiian organizations. And one of the things that I really appreciate and feel very humbled was the experience when I went to the tribes, when I talked to the tribal elders. And that is, if you only see one tribe, you only know one tribe. So with that, I want to thank everyone for allowing me this time to use some of the facts about the API. I hope this is helpful. And on the last slide, I also have listed some of the references I have done to prepare for this slide deck. So thank you.
Thank you, Derek. This was very thoughtful and insightful. And I think one key takeaway for me is just what you stated, that, that within cultural groups there still remains diversity. And so even when it comes to data, subpopulations and the disaggregation of data is very important. And so thank you for highlighting that today. And also just the topic on immigration and immigrants, I think was important to note as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so moving to our next presenter is Sang Yang with the Hmong Cultural Center of Butte County. And I want to extend a thank you to Sang as well. I met Sang while I was working at the California Department of Public Health, and when we were lifting the California Reducing Disparities Project. And I became very intrigued with the work that he and his team were doing in Butte County with Hmong elders. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sang. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Marina. Thank you for the opportunity. Also, thank you for the groups to give the opportunity. And right, this is Sang, the director at the Hmong Cultural Center here in Butte County. And next slide, please. Today, before going to the Zhongxue program, the Zhongxue program is the focus program for today. But before going to that, I would like to give a little bit of a background and history of the Hmong. So that means, many of you may know, because we quite have a large number of Hmong in California. But I also would like to that. And also we'll go a little bit history about the Hmong Cultural Center, and then we can go to the Zhongxue program. Next slide, please. Well, according to the Hmongs, we have an origin back to China, back to China for a long time, which we don't, be able to trace back. But according to the family and our oral history, and we can trace our root back to our ancestor, back to the late 1800 or early 1900, which we still can be able to trace that back to China. That's where we came from. And in Laos, we came into Laos in 1960 to 75. The Hmong was again involved with the Vietnam War, and that's where we are here in the United States. And after the fall of Saigon, a couple of countries, the Laos and Cambodia, the Hmong also became a refugee to many other countries, but we mostly came to the United States since 1975 to 90, and the really last recently refugee to the United States is 2010. Next slide, please. Yes, a couple of the pictures that I would like to show. What you see on the top left is the General Wang Pao with one of the CIA agents, and the middle picture is the you see what the blue line is. That's the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That is one of the U.S. goal that to block the Ho Chi Minh Trail supply military supply from north to south, and the right picture is the Patella troops. After they took over the Laos, the Hmong also became refugee, as you see the picture below. Next slide, please. After the South Asia was far into the communists took over, and the Hmong and many other South Asia was immigrant to neighbor country. Example, we can most likely came to the Thailand, and then to many other countries. This is what the route of immigration of the Hmong came to the United States in early in the middle of 1975 to 90. And after the 80s, you guys also see that Hmong became a secondary immigration back to California, Fresno, because that is the expertise of the Hmong that we came from. Our expertise is working the farm, and since they're going to many other states that our expertise is not working well, then that's why we have the secondary immigration that the Hmong move back to Fresno, because the Fresno is a state county there. It's good for farming, and that's why we have a quite large number Hmong in Fresno, even though then and now. Next slide, please. Here is the condition of living back into the camps. We have many other camps, but this is one of the camps that you will see the refugee, when they live in that, that's the, the house that they live, that's the situation that they face too, and also you see the picture of the on the right, and all the refugee camp was a fence, and everybody had to stay inside of the fence in the camps. Next slide, please. After moving to the United States, we think that we will be better, but actually for those who have the education, who be able to learn the language, start a new life in here, but here's our elderly. Our elderly, pretty much when they got in here, they don't speak the language, they don't know the culture, and they don't, I might say that they don't really like the food that we have in here. Really a few that they can try, but the picture that you see on the left, it's the place for she to stay is her homes, and pretty much, and you see that she have a really face that she is pretty stressed. And there's a second picture on the right. That's the only place they can stay. It's go out is the backyard. If they don't have a backyard, then they have no place to stay out. We have a story. We have many story happen that our elderly walk in the street and they don't know how to walk back because they get lost in the street because they don't know the street, and they walk and they don't really be able to recognize the street and be able to read the street and get back home. And they pretty much stay their home or their backyard. That's where we have a program that to support the elderly here in Butte County. Next slide, please. Here's the Hmong Culture Center, a little bit of the Hmong Culture Center, and a nonprofit, small nonprofit organization started in 2000. And the Hmong Culture Center is a Hmong and Southeast Asia Community Resource Center for the Hmong and Southeast Asia community. Mission is to improve the life of the individual and family through culturally sensitive education, advocacy, support, and service. And this is what the kind of service that we have here at the Center for the Hmong community in Butte County and Northern County. We have behavioral health serve. We have also serve the elderly, family and children, community resource, cultural worker for the Hmong, education and outreach, health and wellness, immigration, citizen assistant, language access, navigation, referral, and use also serve for the Hmong and Southeast Asian community. Next slide, please. Now we go to the Zhongxia team. The Zhongxia team is what Marina is really want me to focus for the group for today. And what we just learned is the history of the Hmong. Zhongxia is literally translated as a happy program. This program is mainly targeted for the Hmong elder or the Southeast Asian elder who is 50 or older. However, it's open to the public, and participants who can be under 50 can participate or participate in the program, but they have to refer either from behavioral health or from their physician, so they can be part of that as well. Next slide, please. Overview of the Zhongxia program. Zhongxia is a community-based prevention and early intervention program. Is aimed to prevent and reduce further mental health problem and isolation among the Hmong elder, strengthening the community's social engagement in the Hmong community, to improve both psychological and spiritual health, and to increase access to culturally and linguistically appropriate fundamental health service. It's designed for culturally meaningful and relevant to the Hmong and Southeast Asia elderly. Next slide, please. Culturally appropriate service, we in the Hmongs, because we have our own belief and we have to really culturally for that. Also, we do the recreational groups and have them coming together to the group to share and to idea or to learn from each other. Which benefit trip, which we take them to, field trips, such as like go to the botanical garden in San Francisco and also other places as well. A community garden is a expertise, as I mentioned earlier, and that's their elderly expertise. When they do the community garden, they are pretty happy with that. We do refer and also do case management as well. Next slide, please. The Hmong, it's, we don't have a religion. We do believe in animism, and we do believe that, all things, even though non or living things have a spirit. And the goal is to be in harmony, we so believe that a human being have a three soul, meaning a spirit. Because, because of that, when we get ill, the Hmong believe that in spirit, side, because the spiritual is no longer with the body, that's where we get sick. That's our belief. A shamanism is a way that to balance or to communicate or to talking with the soul, getting the soul back to the body. And we do believe that when you get the soul back to the body, you will get well. Next slide, please. With the recreation and with the group of the mental health for the elderly, we do have two sides. One side in Oregon here and the other side in Chico is between about 20 miles away apart. And that's the majority of the two major cities of the Hmong we live the most. And we also have the 5 health puppy that which we educate and we teach them. Each puppy will last for 8 weeks and 7 weeks for the lesson activity and 1 week for review and also pre and post. All the pre and post survey is a quiz, and that is for each topic. And the survey is assessing the attitude and belief of the health. The topic, the quiz assess their knowledge before and after the topic, each topic. Next slide, please. Here is a field trips. A lot of the elderly. We have right now we have close to 100 elderly participants, and a lot of them have never go field trip out of the city or somewhere, and we will take the field trip. This is a field trip to Reading at the Turtle Bay, and they're really happy, and they also be able to walk with their friends, and they also see a new place and be able to walk out of the house or the in the backyard. Next slide. Here's a garden. As I mentioned earlier, garden is the expertise of our elderly. And when the elderly come here to work with the garden, when you see here, we have the elder coming to work on the field. They're pretty happy, even though right now it's pretty hard, but it's not really hard for them. They will be able to work from the morning until 1 or 2. We ask them to start not to work so hard because it's the sun is too hard. They say, working in the garden, they don't feel that it's hard from the sun. So and they really like it. And also by the time of the harvest, they also have the eggplants, all the cucumber, the corn, which we don't have in here, but that's what they have when we have a harvest during the harvest time in October or November. Next slide, please. So this is life skill, a couple of the pictures here to teach them about life skill. They give them a life skill, and sometimes we also teach them how to, follow the doctor prescription and follow the, the medication, because for the elderly, they take somebody they take quite a lot of the medication too. So, but and that is something that we give them. But this is some of the picture for the life skill for them to, to activity for the elderly at the center. Next slide. Cultural activity is important too, because this is a cultural activity. You see the custom, which is the Hmong customs, and you see the painting the turkey. That's why during the Thanksgiving time we have that. This turkey time. That's a culture to show with the elderly, because sometimes they're at home, they share with the family or someone else, but it's not with their friend, and they don't have the chance to do the activity that they do. And at the center, they will be able to handle an activity when we either take they paint the turkey, and then we either take at the same time. So that's some cultural activity that we have for the elderly, and you see that, and they're pretty happy with that. Okay, next slide, please. Again, this is a slide of mental health. During the mental health, for example, this month we just have a mental health event yesterday, but this is the event that we have before we wear the green light. The ribbons that is to support the mental health. And during the mental health, we talk about the mental health. Oftenly in Hmong, we don't really have a word for mental health, and that we're still searching for. We hope that one of this day, our educator, professional will find some. But literally translate in mental health in Hmong, that's say crazy. And when our community is small, and then when someone as they go into the mental health, and the community know that when you go to mental health, you have some crazy, your brain's not working, you're crazy, that's a win, you win there. And this is something that we educate the Hmong community, and the elderly say no, that is not only say crazy, but mental health could be severe mental health, or just the stage of beginning. Since we have your stage of beginning of the mental health, we would like to support, would like to help you mental health to support community to get better from mental health, not to when you go there, doesn't consider that you're crazy, you go there because you get help. So that's kind of education outreach that we give to the community, so they're know that mental health is also a help that will support them, will help the community. Next slide, please. This is physical activity, back to where we came from. Our parents are working pretty hard in the field and the village. When they walk from the village to the right field, it might take about 30 minutes, an hour or 2 hours back and forth every day. So they have the opportunity working hard in the field, and so physical activity. But when our elderly came to the United States, where you see two pictures earlier, that they pretty much stay home because they don't have a place to go. The only place the two places they stay is stay their home or their backyard, and then they don't really exercise much. So our team, they don't share. The staff is really teach them. Even though you stay home, you will be able to exercise. Don't just stay there. You have to exercise. You have to, work for yourself. And maybe sometimes, as with your family member, going to the park, or maybe play a ball, something like that. So this is the kind of exercise that we teach them to do that, because often the elderly, they have in the Hmong community, we quite have the cholesterol and also diabetes. That's two of the really illness that are pretty high in the Hmong community, especially for the elderly that who don't really have a place, or they don't really exercise much. Next slide, please. Okay, well, Hmong Culture Center, Zhongshe is one of the 35 IPP. IPP, it's an implementation pilot program, which is for the California Reducing Disability Project. It was happened since 2017. This is a picture. You see, Marina is also right there. This is the I think to me, I think this is one of the best picture that we have for many years ago, and we also have right now. By looking to this, we can tell that after each year we do have the evaluator to evaluate the programs. For example, in 2018, you will see that we got about 9%, better for their mental health better. And also in 2019, well, we down a little bit, we only gained only 5%. And 2020, well, because the COVID-19, we gained 1%. And 2021, we gained back 6%. So, we are keep, going up for that. And also you will see the data is on the right side. We have about 81%, for the participants, they say, I deal more effectively with my daily problem. That's 81%. And the 70% say that my symptom or problem are not bother me as much. That's the 70%. And then the 64% that I do better in my school or work. So, as we have this program culturally appropriate for the community and our elderly, it's kind of like giving improve. So this is this is one of the great programs that we have in here, and it's still continuing. So hopefully this is what can continue to serve the elderly, our community. So I think the next slide, please. I think that's pretty much, that's pretty much for my presentation today. And, any question, anything, and I will be able to answer. We'll try my best.
Thank you so much, Thang. I would really love to do a field trip to your organization, and whoever would love to join me. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing in Butte County. And I just love the way that you're addressing mental health, public health, and loneliness and isolation, which is huge for our older adults. And so just much appreciation there. I do see one hand. We're going to be going into public comment and committee questions or also. So Sarah, I see your hand. I'll defer to you and then we'll move from there.
Great. I'll be really quick. I just want to say, Sang, thank you for that. If you're able to stay on and learn about our older adult behavioral health initiative, I think that this is exactly the type of program that we are thinking of lifting up through our efforts, because you are meeting older adults where they are in the community through a culturally responsive approach that's not necessarily clinical, but it does a lot to build community, address isolation. It was so many of the themes that we heard at the roundtables throughout the state were on the importance of programs like this that do so much to build community. And it's just tremendous work you're doing. And I look forward to a site visit in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me know the site visit. We'd love to have the site visit, and we have the first, second, and third week on Wednesday, which will have the groups as from 10 to 1. So we would love to. You can come for one of these days to visit our elderly, and so you can see by your own, own eyes better than eyes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to go to Betsy now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for those great presentations. I wanted to ask one question and make one point. And question with regard to, the whole state is dealing with a lot of fallout from, excuse me, global climate change and the fires. And so if, you're already up kind of in a rural area saying, and people are already feeling isolated and having, challenges with regard to communicating, everyone has to be more concerned about our older people who are remote and rural. And I would imagine you all are putting in a really, great communication program or however, because that must be really, really scary. And then I just wanted to point out to Derek and the group that although there are a lot of very well paid AAPI people, the reason that it's skewed so much is that there are very well paid people at the top, but some of the lowest paid people in our country and in our state are of AAPI descent. These are our house cleaners. These are people who, are just living on the edge, and like so many women in particular, that is the case. But certainly for the AAPI community and the Latina community, they are, going to miss out on nearly millions of dollars in their lifetime. And since the AAPI community is, I believe, still blessed with tremendous longevity, right? They're going to have a lot of issues going forward. And it's something that we as a state, we as a country really need to focus on equal pay and equity in the workplace. So I just want to point that out. But anyway, I would love to hear what ideas or what programs you have in place for those who are more rural with regard to the potential fire damage and floods and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Okay, let me see on my screen here. Edie?
Yeah, thank you. And Betsy, thanks for those comments. I think what you're also pointing out is just the importance of the disaggregated data, right? When you think about the model minority myth, and if you're looking at Asian Americans as a whole, it really minimizes the impact of those who are of lower economic status and whatnot. I have a question for Sang. I really appreciated your presentation. I found it very enlightening, and I wondered about how your experience of what is the best way of communicating information, providing education and information to among older adults. So whether it's COVID or health related information, is the best way of getting the message out through oral presentations, or is it written materials? What is your advice?
Well, my advice is that, both are good, but yeah, for the elderly, oral is, to me, oral is much better based on what we have in here, because you're right, during the COVID, those, and then, what we do, we have a small group, we have an individual, we went to the house to teach them example of the, wearing the mask. Some of the elderly, they say, oh, they don't want to wear mask because wearing mask is, making the heart, put it hard to breathe, and, they don't feel comfortable, and that's some of the issue. But, we also have, a lot of events throughout the years, throughout the New Year, and, for example, we have a quite gathering large community New Year, Sacramento, Fresno. Sometimes we do have in Butte County as well, but it's not large as Sacramento and Fresno, and that is something they can get through. Also for the elderly, radio is something that's still really popular for the elderly, and to reach out to the elderly, radio is something popular. You can talk, you can use the local radio to reach out to among elderly. For the younger, but not really, radio is not good for the younger, but for the elderly. And plus, right now we have what called the Mount Story back time for the YouTube. A lot of the some of the YouTube that they work pretty well, and they talk about the oral history and the story, and then our elderly really like to listen to that too, and that's maybe some consideration. That's, I'm not sure you answer that, but, and also reach out to the nonprofit organization, community organization that they can be reached out. For example, Hmong culture in the front line of the Hmong community here in Butte County, so we may be the one that will be able to reach out to the that population. And also, I would like to respond back to Sarah's, question earlier regarding to the natural disaster, couple fire that we have here in Butte County and the dam, the spillway. That is something that is really difficulty for the elderly, especially. I often talk to the safety committee in Butte County. I say, when the back to where we came from is different than the United States here. Back to where we came from. When you see a police siren go into the street, you cannot intervene. When you go intervene, then they will put you in a spot that you don't want to be. But here in the United States, when the siren go to the street, you can, you can go. For example, when we have a spillway, the dam, and we also have the, evacuate that, and also the fire as well. And the police, they go to the street, and our elderly, they lock the door, they put the fence, their windows down, they block everything. They don't want to see that because they experience, and they have back to where we came from. So I also talked to the safety committee in Butte County, say, we need someone that to be able to help. We need someone that to be able to help, because it's not just English, but we'll see if we can do something. Otherwise, for the for the spillway, we have a couple elder that's they have a relative live out state, they have relative live out country. They say, you need to move right now, the dam is about to blow, and then you will be flooded, you need to move. And until they got that, so we found out that this is happened after this disaster. So this is something that have been mentioned to the safety committee, and see what can we do if we have next time. Hopefully that we're not going to have any more, but who knows, right? So yeah, we do need some more education to the elderly, especially for this elderly, to ensure that. And also the smoke is really something too, regarding to the smoke, back to where we came from, where we talk to our elderly, educate to them that, smoke here is different than where we came from. Back to Laos or country, Southeast Asia country, the smoke is not that really bad. They said, well, we used to live in smoke, slash urban, and we used to live that, we don't have an issue. And we end up with a couple elderly go to ER because the smoke during the campfire, during the Dexy fire. And we really try to education to our community that's the difference between smoking here and the difference in smoking there. And right now we also work with the UC Berkeley, some kind of education to educate among community about the smoke. And we also think about looking forward for some education to the more community as well. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I see one more question. We're going to go to Vince, and then we're going to move on to our next presentation. Thank you so much for the engagement. Vince, you're on.
Hi, thank you for the presentations, and please take my comments in the spirit that they're made, and with no disrespect to our presenters. But when we talk about AAPI Heritage Month, the part that's often missing is the Pacific Islanders. And just by the number of the population of Asians, we're just completely dwarfed. I'm a native Chamorro, a native of Guam. And I just want to put that out there. One of the things that's rapidly changing now, younger people tend to identify more with the BIPOC label under the indigenous piece there. And what's beautiful about our communities is that instead of yelling at each other and telling me that I'm the problem, it's like we're having a conversation about how do we work with this so that we can get our voices heard, and how can we be respectful of the generations? Because in terms of economics, in terms of like what we talked about climate change, some islands will like maybe not exist in the future because of climate change, but also the incomes for a lot of Pacific Islanders, they tend to be more in the poorer neighborhoods and tend to need more services. And so outreach strategies need to be really, very different. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. And thank you to the presenters, but I'm often told, because I have a place at the table, that I need to raise this. And so I just want to put it out there, and thank you all.
I appreciate that, Vince. I love candor and honesty. And so thank you for raising that and elevating the PI piece. And so just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we are going to keep moving along. Thank you to both presenters. And if you have any additional resources you'd like to share or support from this group, please reach out to me. And saying I will be following up with you about a field trip, and anyone interested can email me. Thank you. Next in the queue, we're going to be going into department updates from the California Department of Aging, and I will turn it over to Amanda.
Again, everyone. I wanted to give a few updates on an item that I had discussed at a previous meeting. It's our local Aging and Disability Action Planning Grant Program. And so this is the $4.5 million one-time funding we received to provide competitive grants to local communities, and communities being cities, counties, or regions, and tribal communities as well, to develop their own local master plan for aging. And we'd love for them to include that disability lens as well. We have awarded about $3 million so far. So we had a request for applications go out earlier this year. We reviewed those applications and we determined that 15 of those applicants were deserving of the $200,000 that they were that they had asked for to do their 2.5-year process to develop their own local aging and disability action plan. So that does leave us with about $1 million to go out again for a second round of RFAs. And so we're going to open that up this summer. I'm going to show you in a minute those who received this first round of funding. But I did want to also just request, any input or ideas that this committee has, or just your assistance in getting that word out for our second request for applications. Really great projects. We received so many great applications. We'd love to be able to fund, 5, 6, 7 more communities to do this work. Part of this program includes technical assistance and a formal evaluation. So we have partnered with UC Davis. Heather Young, who is an MPA stakeholder, is leading this effort. And we'll be developing webinars, coaching sessions, discussion boards, just a way for these communities to connect, to share best resources. And also we'll be bringing in subject matter experts to help these communities work through all the different layers, all the work that it takes to develop a master plan. Having done it at the state level, we know, it's a lot of work to really do that rich stakeholder and public engagement, to really conduct community assessment surveys and hold listening sessions and do surveys and do interviews and focus groups with folks. So you all are experts on this call, and I'd love, you can reach out to me later. You can share any ideas today. But of course, there's a huge focus on equity in this technical assistance program and in this program in general. And we had hosted a listening session with those interested in the applications earlier this year. And we heard from folks how we could best embed equity into the program and how our application process could ensure that we were getting applicants who were really thinking through how they're applying the equity lens to their work, how they're doing that community outreach to really reach folks who had not often been heard from, who are often overlooked. And we did receive lots of great applications that really address that sort of work. So let me show you actually who received the awards. And I'm really excited about this because we have cities and counties and a couple counties who have banded together. We've got them in Northern California, Southern California, Bay Area, Central Coast, Inland Empire. Some AAAs are in here, some independent living centers, and some smaller CBOs. And I'll show you the next slide. So Madera County on there. And one of the things that these applicants had in common was that they could prove that they had the capacity to build this plan. They had already done some of the groundwork to do aging and disability friendly work. And they just kind of needed that boost of funds and resources to help them take their work to the next level. So again, we are opening up a new RFA for about $1 million is what we have left to fund. All applicants can ask for up to $200,000 award. And we'll open that up sometime this summer. We're currently executing the 15 contracts for the committees, or for the communities that were awarded. And once we have completed that contract process, we'll go ahead and move forward with our second round. One thing you might notice on here is we did not award any tribal communities. We didn't receive any applications from tribal communities. So I'm so glad we have a tribal liaison now. And so I will work with Consuelo on seeing how we can improve our outreach to tribal communities. But it would be really great as we build up our relationship with tribal communities to involve them in programs like this. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or suggestions about this program? I'm quite grateful for everyone's support. We had, I think, some members on our review panel to help us review the applications we had received. I will open it up and let me know. Okay, well, that's.
I have a question, just really quick. Cheryl Brown. I noticed it seems that mostly all of the awardees were in Northern California, am I right?
We have Riverside and San Bernardino.
There we are, the Inland Caregiver Resource Center.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got that. Monterey County, the city of Salinas has was awarded, not the city itself, but the Alliance on Aging that's located in Salinas. We did receive
second slide. I didn't see the first one.
We received a lot of applications from Los Angeles area. So there is a lot of interest in LA and already a lot of great work going on. I think one thing I saw through this process was there could be a lot of connections made across these community-based organizations to bring folks to the table and connect them with LA County and the work that they've already done on their Purposeful Aging Los Angeles plan. So yeah, there's so much work to be done in this space. This is a really great start. Vince.
Would could like does it have to be like general population, or could it be like specific populations like LGBTQ, older people with HIV? Could we do something specific to those populations, or does it need to be more general and serve a broader?
We did describe the communities as a geographic location, emphasizing the need to do that outreach to communities who have been long overlooked. And we did receive some applications that were quite focused on reaching out to specific ethnic or racial groups. And as long as they were still focused on the broader population, they were eligible for award. Unfortunately, the way it's written, which I think is such a cool concept, would be to do one that's specific to LGBTQ older adults or another sort of population. So that's something that we're definitely bearing in mind for future should, additional grant opportunities come CDA's way. But we do, I think you remember from last time, have Ross leading our LGBTQ older adult study, which will definitely help improve a lot of this work across California.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Denny.
Great. Hi, everyone, and thank you for the update. Amanda, congrats on getting these initial grants out, and congrats on having more money to give out. So my question is, you had said that there were a lot of sort of one of the requirements was for the applicants to think through how they would reach hard to reach communities, and that the applicants really all did a great job in describing that. I'm wondering if you can give some examples of ways in which they propose to do that. And then for all the ones who have been awarded funding, how will we ensure that there's actually equitable impact? So it's one thing to describe a proposal that you might have a theory on how that would advance equity. And then on the final end, how do we ensure that the impact is indeed equitable?
Yeah, to answer your second question, that's one reason I'm so happy we were able to use some of the funds to contract UC Davis to do an evaluation. So their evaluation is multi-pronged in that they're assessing policy changes or impact at that elected leader level, also partnership improvements and expansions, as well as community impact. So I think I can come back once that evaluation has been worked out with UC Davis. Perhaps we could get some input to make sure we're actually addressing, have really good measures for how well these communities are reaching disadvantaged populations. We also have, I'm really happy, Rutgers University is really kind of at the forefront of doing a lot of this age-friendly and equity-related program evaluation. And they are actually partnering with UC Davis through the project to provide their subject matter expertise on this and kind of help us with that, with the evaluation plan. So more to come on that. Well, there were so many different applications, a couple examples. Well, we have some who are just really honed in already on specific cultural nuances for various populations. And I'm blending them all in my head, so I don't think I'm going to give a very clear picture. Although Jackie Tompkins is on the line, who also reviewed a number of these applications. Jackie, you can jump in with an example if you'd like, but we know that down in LA have a lot of examples of folks who already have had roundtables, and they've really focused on specific smaller groups, and they've hosted events that had culturally appropriate food, culturally appropriate just communications, and they're just really already very tuned into those communities. So they're able to do that level of outreach. Definitely, I feel like the application in Monterey was really focused on farm workers and agricultural workers. So they already have that into that community. Although they did focus a lot of their application on that community, they still are serving the whole city. They're developing a plan for the whole city. That one stands out the most in my mind as one that just seemed to be really, really, really trying to ensure that this plan has an equitable, access to the public and stakeholders, and really a lot of equitable input to develop a plan that's very, focused on everyone in that area, in that region. Mm-hmm.
This is Jackie Tompkins. Super quick, just to add to that component, a lot of these organizations that were awarded talked about in their application how they would partner with specific community-based organizations to reach populations that maybe they haven't been able to reach previously on communities needs assessments. Some of these awardees have done a certain level of community needs assessments, but they also recognize some gaps in their own previous work. And so there's a lot of partnerships that are actively taking place. So then the grantees can work with other partners in their community who are trusted to gather additional data, hear additional feedback and insights, and learn about what specific populations and community groups need, including caregivers. And so that was one strategy that some of the organizations also described in their applications. But yeah, there were several of them. Hard to pinpoint exactly what each of these did, but I was just trying to reflect on some of the winning strategies that stood out.
Yep, that was definitely one of the criteria we applied to applications. Was do they already have a coalition, or is there a coalition building happening in place that was representative of communities? So that was definitely something that we reviewed in our process of awarding. But I will come back with more info on the evaluation. It's an exciting component. And also, again, with equity being so key and the points that you're making, that's an opportunity for technical assistance throughout these processes for these communities as they do their stakeholder and public engagement. So if we might reach out and invite some folks to be on a webinar with us during the next year and a half or so that we're providing that technical assistance. So more to come on that. Jax.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add, as somebody who actually reviewed some of these applications, that I thought that this was a great opportunity for community-based organizations that may not have had any kind of contact before with the CDA, the California Department of Aging, to actually engage with perhaps the AAA in their area to partner on this. And really the CBOs address, as was already stated here, that the CBOs oftentimes address the equity issues or the underserved populations. And it was really the AAAs that were trying to actually reach out to the population. And this was a great way to partner and to get that experience with the Department of Aging.
Thank you, Jax. Thanks for reviewing too.
Thank you.
Derek.
Yeah, I also was involved in reviewing, very impressed by the applicants you mentioned and the awardee, and that's Salinas and Monterey, and really impressed me with the kind of breadth of coalition they're looking at, and also how they're going to snowball it into the largest city. So I'm glad they're chosen.
Thanks, Derek. Also, thank you for reviewing.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda, and thank you for the commentary, committee members. We're going to move on to our next presentation. And so Ross Lellian, you're on deck.
Thanks, Marina. Hi, everyone. I'm Ross Lellian, and I'm CDA's research manager. Really excited to discuss our Can you guys hear me? I think I got muted for a second there. Can everyone hear me? Okay, sorry. Just saying hi, just introduce myself. I'm Ross Lellian. I'm going to present our upcoming older adult LGBTQ study and survey with you today. So we can go to the next slide, please. So I just want to start with some background about myself. So I don't think I've met everyone on the call. So I started with CDA on December 1st. I've been here for almost 6 months. And prior to joining CDA, I was with the Department of Healthcare Access and Information, or HCI, as the Health Workforce Development Research and Evaluation Chief. I led a team of researchers there. And our charge was collecting a wide variety of data related to the health workforce, so demographic data, data on supply and demand, equity data. And we use these data to understand where the gaps are in terms of our health workforce, so racial and ethnic gaps, linguistic gaps, and gaps in terms of areas that just don't have enough healthcare providers. And with these data, we're able to utilize it as an input into policy making and program development. Our end goal was always targeting resources to underserved communities, and data really helped us be more accurate and purposeful at allocating those resources. So I was brought on to CDA to mature how we interact with data. And I think a big piece of that is using data to help inform policy. So today I'm going to provide you with an update around our efforts to collect older adult LGBTQ plus data and how these data will impact policymaking. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we at CDA are really excited to undertake this study because we recognize how important this study is. So we're collecting data from the older adult LGBTQ Californian community because this is historically marginalized, underserved community. And we as a state, we know that we must do a better job understanding the needs of this community and where the respective gaps are. And national data tells us that these folks are more likely to live alone and face isolation when compared to heterosexuals, many fear reporting their sexual orientation in long-term care facilities due to fears of discrimination. There's also higher rates of disability. And a study during the height of COVID actually revealed that LGBTQ plus midlife and older adults in San Francisco suffered higher rates of isolation, depression, and suicidal ideation than pre-COVID. So unfortunately, these issues in large part have gotten worse since COVID. So it's a really critical time for us to conduct this study and collect these important data. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this is a first of its kind state level study. So data on this respective population has not been collected at the state level. We're developing the survey that'll be administered to older adult LGBTQ Californians. So folks over the age of 55 who reside in California. And the purpose of this study is for us at the state to collect a baseline set of information. And we want this information to drive policy and program design. So with these data, we can better understand service gaps, for example, gaps in social service providers in regions of our state, gaps in medical services, better training for our providers. Then we can use these data as an input to develop programs to meet consumer needs. Survey is going to be wide ranging. This can include the topics you see on the slide, demographics, housing, discrimination, behavioral health, equity, along with other topics as well. Next slide, please. This survey is going to cut across all regions of our states, urban, rural, frontier. And we want our respondents to mirror the diversity of our states. We plan on oversampling BIPOC and API communities to ensure we have enough data to understand the lived experience for these marginalized communities. A really critical component of the survey design and distribution process is our collaboration with the statewide coalition. And a subset of that coalition to serve as an advisory committee. And so the coalition will be a collection of service providers and LGBTQ older adults and others who are trusted voices within the community. And these folks will be able to provide critical feedback to us about during the survey development process. They'll help us understand what questions to prioritize, how to frame some of these questions. So we're working with our partners at Open House in San Francisco to develop this coalition and start to collect stakeholder feedback that should be starting next month. And so just as important as the coalition's role in the survey development process, they can be critical in helping us distribute the survey because we're going to face challenges probably in rural communities and other communities as well to collecting data. So working with these trusted partners to be able to reach different parts of the state, that's going to be really important. This will largely be an online survey, but we're going to provide support for folks who lack access to technology to complete the online survey. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this slide shows the types of outputs we plan on gaining from the study. I want to emphasize the second bullet, which is about data collected in the survey instrument. So we'd like to conduct the study on a periodic basis going forward. So as we establish the survey instrument, it'll make future iterations of the survey more efficient on the development end, because we're not going to start from scratch, or we have some kind of build off of and modify as necessary. We also plan on making these data public to the best of our ability. So no personally identifiable information. We're going to aggregate these data to adhere to strict data protection policy. But I think making these data public will be really useful for their researchers and policy folks to be able to conduct their own analysis and hopefully advocate within their respective communities. We'll also develop fact sheets and executive summary, a long form report, and an identification of policy priorities. The next slide. This lists a sample of some of those policy implications that may come from the study. They include expanded training to reach older adult LGBTQ communities, improving access to affirming care, and this includes diversifying our service providers to match the diversity of our state and address those really important culturally specific needs. Also recommendations on programs that can reduce barriers. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list, and other program and policy implications will arise once we collect these data. So I think that was the last slide. We'll move forward. That was a really quick overview, but I'm happy to provide updates in the study as we begin to collect data. We're going to administer the survey really soon, and I look forward to sharing the findings with you, which is going to be ready hopefully in May or June of next year. So with that, Marina, I think we have a couple minutes to answer some questions.
Sure, Ross, thank you. And I just wanted, and I'm not sure if the committee is interested in knowing at what point their input can be leveraged, regarding the survey, or where the key kind of areas of where feedback can be received, I think would be helpful for them.
Thanks for that, Marina. Absolutely. Yeah. So the stakeholder process, that coalition I described, hopefully that's going to be launching next month, definitely by July. And I think we could invite some of you folks to be involved in that process. It's going to be a wide-ranging stakeholder process. So Marina, I could contact you directly, and I think you're going to be heavily involved in that process. So I can contact you hopefully next month, like early next month, with more details about that. And if anyone's interested, please contact me. My email is here, Marina, of course. We can get you connected with that stakeholder effort. And Marina, I just want to emphasize that point's going to be critical, that stakeholder process, because we need that stakeholder process, right, to really have an effective survey and reach the different regions of our state.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to also just thank Marcy for leading this effort.
Right. Thank you, Marcy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is Marcy on the call?
Yes.
I want to give a shout out to Marcy and Kathleen Sullivan from Open House. Thank you for your leadership on this. I didn't realize you were on the call.
Oh, hi,
Marcy. Marcy has her hand up. Hi, Marcy.
Hi, Russ. That was an amazing. You did that so quick, so fast, so well. Thank you so much.
You.
Wow, you took my breath away.
I said a few minutes, Marina warned me. I had five or 6 minutes.
I just want to say that without this study, really, the LGBT California population of older adults would really not be able to take part in all the good work of the Master Plan on Aging. And without this data, we really, the communities all across the state would not really be included in what's happening. And so my hat's off. Thank you to everybody, who really made this possible in the department, and, Susan, Sarah, everybody. It's just been phenomenal. And and I'm really looking forward to it. We really, there's going to be places in this state we've never had any information about, any data from. So it's a very exciting time. Thank you very much.
That's amazing. Thank you. All right. I realize we're running a bit behind schedule. Thank you so much, Ross. And I'd like to turn it over now to our Chief Deputy Director, Mark Beckley, and Dr. Nakia Terry. Thank you for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Marina. I'm not sure if Mark is going to be able to join today, so I'll go ahead and do the presentation on his behalf. Happy to be able to be in attendance today for this meeting. I've learned so much thus far, and just happy to be able to add to the presentation and to be able to discuss a very innovative survey that we have recently implemented through the California Department of Aging. So today I will be sharing with you information about our CASEO Needs Assessment Survey. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. One moment and we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully everyone can see it okay. And I'll go into presenter mode. All righty, so the CDA program updates our CASEO needs assessment. So as it pertains to our CASEO needs assessment, this is a survey that we recently got underway in March of 2023, and CDA is very, extremely excited about this particular survey. The CASEO survey is a partnership that we have with the vendor POCO, and POCO is an organization serving over 350 government partners that are really aimed at developing and administering representative surveys throughout the community. One of their main focuses is to gain input from constituents. They also strive to gather data to assist organizations with making effective change and developing leading edge insights, POCO has been in the past previously supported by public and both private and public data in partnership with Stanford and UW-Madison. Additionally, the POCO team is made up of survey researchers, data scientists, certified engagement professionals, community experts with experience working with and for local, state, and federal governments. So going into the CASEO Needs Assessment Survey, as stated, CDA will be doing the first ever statewide needs assessment survey for older adults aged 55 years and older throughout the state of California. The survey is a community assessment for older adults, also known as the CASEO survey. Some of the main intent of this survey is to track key measures, assist with measuring performance over time, and to compare benchmarks against peer communities. This survey is entirely funded utilizing home and community-based services funding. And again, we are very excited to be able to engage in the first ever statewide needs assessment survey for older adults. That's a great accomplishment for CDA and for the participants and the programs that we support and serve within the state of California. Regarding the purposes of the CASEO needs assessment. So some of the main purposes of this particular survey is to gather information from participants who may or may not be served by our AAA partners, also known as our Area Agency on Aging partners, along with those that are a part of the general population. It is to assist in having us to be able to better understand the needs of older adult Californians. We want to be able to identify ways in which we can help communities grow stronger through participant feedback. And it is an opportunity for us to further establish programs, supports, services that are really geared toward and aligned with the needs of older adults as identified by them, which is so important. We want to be able to really hear the voices of older adults 55 and older within the state of California, so that we can engage and gear our programs and services and supports around what they identify as needs of theirs. What to know about the CASEO survey? The CASEO survey will target and be administered to older adults statewide with varying ethnic and demographic backgrounds. The POCO, the vendor, will work directly with both CDA and all of our 33 AAA partners to do state and locally branded invitations to the CASEO survey and make the CASEO survey accessible to older adults. The survey will be available via mailed paper format in both English and Spanish, as well as an ADA compliant online format via 9 additional languages. So again, the survey will be available via online in English, Spanish, Chinese, Cantonese, Chinese Mandarin, Korean, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Hindi, and Arabic. POCO will use statistically appropriate methodologies, and the responses are going to be weighed at a 95% confidence interval in order to ensure statewide and PSA representation that targets an average of a 5 through 7% margin of error. Statewide survey results, as well as results, will be provided to each individual PSA with cross-tabulation, and our PSA are our AAAs, with cross-tabulation. Additionally, we have and will receive raw survey data from the POCO team in CSV format. And we will share that with all of our local AAAs as an opportunity for them to further invest in the survey and the raw data and really to find out in their areas what are the needs of participants being served. Postcards and printed surveys will be mailed out during the first and second week of June 2023. Open participation to the general public of older adults age 55 and over, and overall data collection will occur between June and July of 2023. Then we will go into doing analysis of survey results, which will occur between July and September of 2023. And then we expect to receive our survey results from POCO in September of 2023. POCO will also conduct a presentation with CDA on the results of the survey. One great thing that we're very excited about is that although the survey will potentially end in or around September and we'll get our results, our AAA partners, all 33 partners, along with CDA staff, will have access to the POCO platform for a period of 48 months should we want to conduct an unlimited number of micro polls and surveys for our program needs. The results of all the micro polls and surveys will be shared with CDA so that we can then share that information with the AAA partners that utilize the platform to do any mini micro surveys that they may have. CDA has already held an internal kickoff meeting with POCO as a part of our implementation of the survey. We've also sent out an introductory email to all AAA directors as well as our planners at all 33 of our AAAs. And we've had, the POCO team has started to also do weekly office hours for CDA and AAA staff to be able to answer any questions that may come about as a result of the survey. We've also provided a timeline as well as the survey instrument so that our AAAs are familiar with the questions that will be asked on the survey. So that does conclude my presentation about the CASEO statewide survey. If you do have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself and I'd be happy to assist you. And Marina, I'll turn it back over to you just in case there are any questions from the team today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nakia. And I see one question in the queue from Catherine.
Good morning, and thank you for all the interesting information. Oh, excuse me, the survey. I have two questions. One is, what effort is being made to reach older adults who are living in residential facilities, nursing homes, assisted living facilities? And the second is just curious about the printed versions going in English and Spanish, but not in other languages, and why that distinction was made, just as a way of ensuring more equitable access to the surveys. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. So those are great questions. Regarding the very first question about the outreach to older adults in facilities. So what we have done is we've met with all of our AAA directors as well as our planners. And so this particular survey that's the POCO team will be sending out, it will be going to all members of the general population. So that could potentially mean those going into facilities. In addition to that, we have encouraged, when it is time for the open participation for this particular survey, we have encouraged our AAA partners to be able to, in their local regions, to reach out and share the survey at facilities, at RCFEs, as well as at skilled nursing facilities and other locations, community centers. They will have that opportunity to share the survey. As stated, they do already have it. And so we are asking and encouraging them to go into those locations and share the surveys with individuals who are there in those locations so that they too have the opportunity to complete the survey and also to make sure that the results are sent back to the POCO team for assessment. Regarding your second question about the English and Spanish, so CDA did purchase this through the POCO contract, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide it based off of their assessment of the survey going out. They have done and administered this survey, the POCO team has, in various states, including New York and Virginia, as well as Minnesota. And through that, we discussed with them the needs in those areas when it came to the printed survey. And so just to be able to make sure that we're able to address the needs of all individuals, we did want to be able to, there was a limited amount of languages that we could provide the survey in. And so we had the option of determining which alternative languages other than English we would be able to have printed, and then providing access to those virtual or online platform for those who wanted to be able to complete it online in other languages. So based off of that, it was determined that the demographics in the state of California, we would have Spanish as the alternative printed survey in addition to English, and then having it also available in those other 7 languages online, or 9 in addition to English and Spanish.
Thank you, Nakia. Danny?
Thank you for your update, and I'm excited to hear that the timeline is so efficient and that we'll see results really soon. I'd echo Catherine's question around the language access piece, in particular, knowing that older adults tend to prefer materials in printed form, and that there are significant disparities in who can access the internet. So it sounds like might be too late to flag that, but and there were some existing limitations. My questions are about one, what type of testing, it sounds like this survey has been administered in other states. What type of testing has been done to ensure that consumers and older adults really understand the questions that are being asked of them, and that the information that's being presented? So one is around testing, whether it's been tested among older adults. And then second is, in particular, knowing that there are going to be some structural limitations, but knowing that you want to reach lots of different types of older adults, what incentives exist for older adults to participate in the survey?
So the incentives are really for them to just be able to share what are their identified needs. Outside of that, we do recognize that there are some limitations. Of course, we wanted to be able to make it as equitable as we possibly could, and have it really shared throughout, so that members of various demographics would be able to, different demographic communities would be able to engage and take the survey. So again, that's why we also did the online platform. Now we are in the process of engaging with a call center that would be able to, once people do receive the survey, to be able to answer any questions via that call center that may arise. We're also working with the POCO team to do a customer service email that would also enable them to share any questions via email that they may have. So those are some of the things that we have underway to try to help logistically and structurally with being able to address the language need for those surveys that we could not get out in paper format in any other languages outside of English and Spanish. So again, we do still have that online platform, and we are looking at options for a call center set up to be able to have those individuals who do have questions and receive the survey via paper format and may need assistance with completing the survey, to have that access there in other languages outside of the 9 that were indicated. So that's one thing that we're looking at addressing. As far as the testing was really done via implementation in other states. So this is a standardized survey. There were not any variations to the survey. This is the same survey that's used in all of the states that I mentioned, along with other states that were not mentioned. And so part of the testing was sending the survey out and having those participants to complete it and getting those responses. And a lot of that information was shared with the CDA team. We got a lot of information and data from the New York area as well as the Virginia area to help us to be able to see what the need of our community would be based off of a lot of the responses that we reviewed with the POCO team and that they shared with us. And so based off of that, that's how we knew that it would be appropriate to have this survey as a part of the state of California and have it sent out to participants of the general population so that they too had the opportunity to be able to share and identify what their needs are in our communities.
Thank you, Nakia. We have 2 more questions, and then we're going to move on to our next presenter. So Derek, and then we'll do Marcy, and you're in the queue.
Thank you, Marina. First and foremost, I want to thank CDA for really taking this on, and also thanks to Catherine and Danny for asking that 2 very important questions. What I want to add actually is more of a comment, because when we look at residents at skilled nursing or assisted living, I recommend that we connect with the California Association of Health Facilities and also the California Assisted Living Association, because they do have the listing of all those facilities, and also not to forget the Leading Age California, whose memberships come from mostly those organizations. They have like over 600 of them. So this will be good resources for you. I know the timeline is very aggressive. I want to congratulate the team for taking this on. Also be mindful that we might be missing some of the components. I'm glad that the portal will be open for another 46 months, but the initial kind of data sets will be extremely important because it sets the tone and benchmark as to what we are looking for. So I just want to make sure that we won't miss anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you for those recommendations. And I will add that I will be presenting on substance use in older adults with the California California Assisted Living Association during the month of June. And this will be a part of sharing that information with them as well, so that they can share with the various RCFEs also.
That's great, Nikia. Thank you. Marcy?
Yes, hi. Thank you for that presentation. And this is another exciting innovation that's happening at this time. And it's wonderful to finally have a state needs assessment. And I know that New York does an excellent job of collecting SOGI data, sexual orientation and gender identity data. So I'm assuming you have those questions in the needs assessment.
So there are some questions in or around some SOGI information in the survey, not as much because we didn't want to go into too much detail in that sense related to this particular survey, because this is a standard survey, but there are some questions. We didn't want to have too many identifiable questions within the survey because we wanted to make it very generalized. And so there are some SOGI related questions within the survey.
Well, thank you for that. It'd be great to be able to look at it myself at some point. Would that be possible?
Absolutely. We will be sharing the survey. And again, it will be going out to members of the general population also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for all the great commentary. And Danny, I'd just like to highlight the points you made, well stated, regarding the digital gap and written format. So, okay, Sarah, you are on.
Thank you so much, Marina. I know we are short on time, and it's just such a pleasure to be here and to hear from all of you. This input is really, really helpful. And I also wanted to just take a few minutes to talk about the Older Adult Behavioral Health Initiative that the governor released as part of his May revision this last week. We are so pleased that the state has proposed to invest $50 million into older adult behavioral health. And we can say that really this issue was elevated so much during the day of action, and our partners at the state heard. And so we've made a concerted effort over the past several months through a multi-pronged strategy to address these issues. And more recently, as Susan, our director DeMorris noted, we convened the 4 behavioral health roundtables across the state. And we heard so much valuable input from our members of the community, elevating key themes of social isolation and loneliness, stigma, workforce and training considerations, culture, the importance of culturally responsive services, and others. And this ties so much into what we heard today from Sang about the importance of building community capacity among local trusted community partners. These are the partners that are able to provide services to the people at the community in a very culturally responsive way. And in so doing, are able to help address isolation and loneliness and other behavioral health needs. So just a high level overview of the $50 million proposal. It's 3 components. The first of which is a $30.3 million grant program for local community capacity building. This will support grants for local community partners. We're going to develop it so that it's broadly across program development, workforce training, and building community partnerships. So we'll be starting our work on that if this proposal is passed by the legislature. It also includes a 10.5 million investment for an ethnic media campaign to reduce stigma among our older adult population and raise awareness of available resources for older adults from communities of color, immigrant communities, veterans, and people who identify as LGBTQ. Finally, the proposal includes a $4.5 million for the continued operation of a behavioral health warm line, which is, right now our partner is in San Francisco, the Friendship Line, and we're going to be, going out to bid for that continuation as well. So it's a very important way to provide emotional support for older adults across the state. So, we're happy to come back at our next meeting and give you an update on this and hear your input, because we will be, assuming it passes through the legislature and is signed into the budget, we will be launching our process for all these components in a very near future. And we really, really want to have it grounded in equity and an equity frame. So that's it. That was super fast. I don't know if Susan wants to add anything on to that, but happy to answer any questions in the few minutes we have.
All right, any questions before we move on? Okay, team, so we have our work cut out for us. We need to be ready to rock and roll. We have a lot of exciting opportunities, and I'm going to give you just a quick update. I know time is short as well, but I'm very excited to give my report out in terms of what's been happening here at Aging and the opportunities that we have that lie ahead for us. So this first slide is really about all the efforts through executive orders, through our justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion at the California Health and Human Services, through our statutes, through our strategic planning. We are just at a good place in time where there is dollars and support and capacity to lift so many equity efforts. And I'm very proud of the department. I'm very proud of the administration for taking equity seriously and putting it at the forefront of the work that we'll be doing. It's not an afterthought, it's embedded. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a new way of doing business. And I hope you're all on board with me to make a lot of these things happen. Next slide, please. Just being in this meeting today, I put the slide up because, I don't need to preach to the choir, but, why equity matters. And when I just was hearing your commentary and your recommendations and where you would like to be involved and the questions you're posing, this is exactly why this group is so key and pivotal to the work that we will be embarking on through the LGBTQ study, through our digital equity efforts, through workforce, through our DEI training that we're proposing to, plan out in the near future. And so just keeping this at the center, keeping us grounded as to why we're doing what we're doing and why equity matters. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to give you a few key highlights. So the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee is a subcommittee at agency level that brings together 12 departments and 5 offices to really just hone in on equity efforts that are happening across the California Health and Human Services Agency, which is really awesome because instead of reinventing the wheel, we can cut, paste, and borrow from other departments who are further advanced in these efforts than we are. But we can also impart and share where we are gaining traction and bring that voice of aging and into the fold, because oftentimes that voice is not present. When we're talking about ageism and ableism and sexism, that voice is not present. So being able to have representatives from our department at the seat to be able to discuss this is awesome. Your effort here through the committee, helping guide the department, helping guide the master plan for aging is critical. As we heard today, the arrival and the hiring of the tribal affairs manager is really going to launch us in another direction. We have minimally been engaging with our tribal partners, and Now we are going to put that front and center and prioritize this. I am also working with my counterpart from our legal team on a language access policy at agency that'll set standards across those 12 departments and 5 offices. But in addition to that, we will be developing our own language access policy through contracts at our department so that we have the resources readily available to support not only, our programming, but our external partners as well. Soon you will be hearing, hopefully at the next meeting, about a racial equity action plan that me and my team are trying to launch at the department. I am really going to reach out to you all because there's so much subject matter expertise within this committee to bring in training, to look at our workforce, to really lead with a racial equity lens. I participate in the CalGrows grant program. This was really about the direct workforce, growing the direct workforce, placing an equity lens on many of the grants that were awarded in terms of training and access and being able to support those who are our caregivers and direct service providers. As we know, most of them are women, women of color, and women of color that are also using public assistance. And so how we could lift that. You heard a lot today about the LGBTQ study, and I'm also participating in a health work group for digital inclusion. And another key priority of mine is ongoing community engagement, not only by way of inviting community-based organizations into our space, but also reaching out to those that we haven't traditionally reached out to. Next slide, please. Okay, so I also wanted to inform you that through some of my meet and greets, and then also through just some of my initial stakeholder engagement telephone calls, some areas that have been highlighted for me to prioritize include LGBTQ efforts, listening and learning regarding older farm workers. And I'm thinking specifically for older farm worker women. And then through the C4A conference, there was a lot of feedback provided to me on still trying to gather more information and considering the barriers and the needs of rural and hard to reach communities. And then lastly, as I mentioned previously, the tribal engagement piece. So realizing that we have 2 more minutes left, I'm going to skip over my last slide because there's one key thing that I really do want to hone in and talk about today, and then open it up briefly for public comment, is that I just want to thank you all for serving. Some of you have been on this committee for your 2-year term. We are going to, I mentioned this last time, we will be beginning our recruitment for the 2023-24 term. We now have Carol on board who helped me plan this meeting. And so my appreciation to Carol. Soon we will be releasing application and supporting materials in June, I believe. Carol, please correct me if I'm wrong. And we are encouraging current members to apply. We also want to hear from you. So please email me or Sarah or the CDA team to just look at our gap areas, think about who's missing, who else we can add, and we welcome referrals. And I think I'm not sure if the committee has a limit or not, but I think we're looking at a 25 member committee. The last thing I wanted to mention about this is we're also considering bringing on a co-chair to the committee that has subject matter expertise in disability. So with that, I want to open it up to the public for any questions, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Hello, this is Carol DeAndres. Thank you for joining us. This is our public comment period. You participants on the line can raise their hand and we will unmute you. If you are attending by phone, please press *9. And then we will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number. I see we have one hand. Taurialinala. Go ahead. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. Taria Lanala, San Luis Obispo, Senior Advocacy and Disability Advocacy. I wanted to thank you all for your commitment and tenacity, and also for the award of the planning grant to San Luis Obispo County, where I live. I worked on that grant, and we look forward to interfacing with the AAA on the Casio survey as well. The data should be very helpful. Appreciate the statewide effort on that. It should be helpful to us in our local MPA planning. Also, thanks to the state for partnering with UC Davis. We look forward to what that might mean to the local organizations. I think that working with other counties is super important. We have developed a mentoring relationship with Ventura County, who already has a local MPA. And we're looking forward to reaching out to Monterey area. Again, thanks for this opportunity. I learned so much today.
Thank you so much. Anyone else on the line?
No other hands, Marina.
Okay, so in closing, I'd like to just wrap up in 1 minute. Thank you, Cheryl Brown, for your interest in the field trip. I will keep folks posted to visit Sang's organization. I also want to just acknowledge the comments that were made around equal pay and equity, and just lifting the lowest paid people in terms of the API and Latina. And Vince, your comment about lifting Pacific Islanders when we're, talking about the AAPI community. I also just wanted to acknowledge Vince as well. I saw your hand and your comment about being part of the stakeholder process when it comes to the LGBTQ study. And also for Amanda's presentation on the local aging and disability action, that she may be reaching out to some of the committee members on to provide TA on some level of a webinar. And also just wanted to thank all our presenters today, and Dr. Nakia for your willingness and openness to hear the feedback, and also taking the recommendations about further engagement on that survey. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for being present with me, and take care all.
Thank you.